This episode of Nintendo Expansion Pass is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our family of podcasts, head over to patreon.com/bossrushmedia or search for us on the Patreon app on your smart device. Thanks for helping us build something better. Hello everybody, welcome to Nintendo Expansion Pass here on Boss Rush Media. I'm your host, the Lights Excited Eddie V. Joining me is the one, the only Bossman himself, Mr. Corey Derrick. Hello, good sir.
Hello. Ready to be here and talk about some things and Nintendo and yeah.
Yes. So everybody, before we actually get into the topic, we kind of like last Nintendo Power Block, I know we talked a lot about sports and stuff, and we mentioned Tecmo Bowl and stuff. And I kind of was wondering, Corey, did you play a lot of the lot of sports games on Nintendo's consoles and everything? Because I know I did like golf, Tecmo Bowl, and Double Dribble.
Well, that exploded in my face. So I didn't play a lot on the NES, and I didn't have a Super Nintendo, but a lot of I did play a lot of sports games on Sega Genesis. So I
did too.
I played like obviously NHL '94 was like a huge thing. Joe Montana the football was really huge for me. I love Joe Montana football, which is hilarious because that means EA had 2 football games on the Genesis.
And I didn't know that when that game came out. I thought that Sega developed it and everything.
Yeah, I thought that was like some sort of case too, but apparently not. Which is weird because it was Sega exclusive, and Super Nintendo got Madden, but it also got Quarterback Club, I think, was the other football game that was kind of in the mix for a while from Acclaim.
Yeah.
Because that's the one I played on Nintendo 64 was Quarterback Club. But also, like, I don't know if it was Nintendo exclusive, because maybe console exclusive, but I had it for Game Gear also.
I think it came out later for other consoles. I think Nintendo got it first. Yeah,
it must have. But like, I also played like, obviously NBA Jam was a huge one.
Yeah,
but I also played like NBA. Was it NBA Live at that point? It might have been. I played a lot of whatever NBA game I played that was like the realistic game, because I remember trying to play as the Bulls, and Michael Jordan was on the Bulls, but it was player 99 with like a silhouette with like a silhouette headshot, and it was clearly Michael Jordan.
It may have been NBA Live, because I know Bulls versus Blazers was the first one, I think, for Sega Genesis.
I don't remember that one.
That's when because I never understood with the EA cartridges, they were a little bit bigger and they had that yellow piece in it, and I never understood what it was for.
It's probably just like a marking thing, the way that like Nintendo puts some of their marquee games in red cases, at least on the Wii U, right? And in the Wii. So I mean, it's also like, I don't know, the Genesis was weird too with their boxes, because there was like 3 different versions of the Genesis box. Like the ones with like the red trim around it, right? And then you got the Sonic games with like the grid pattern, similar to the Master System. Like Sonic 1, if you bought it outside of the Genesis, like pack-in, it had like that, like the opposite of Master System. Remember, the Master System was like, it was white with a blue grid, right? And Sonic was black with a white grid.
I had Black Belt, and it just had like this cartoonish foot, like in the thing.
Yeah. So it was like, I don't know, man. The sports games always also, like, especially the Sega sports games, had the white cases that said Sega Sports on it in big blue lettering, right? And that was mostly like Daytona, and some of the other ones. But Yeah, I played a ton of Joe Montana football, and then when N64 came around, it was Blitz, it was Wayne Gretzky's 3D
Yes.
hockey, it was a little bit of Madden, but I wasn't that into Madden at that point. Like I don't know why I skipped sports games on the N64 for some reason. Probably because they sucked, to be honest. But NBA Hang Time also on N64, that was awesome. That was like the sequel to NBA Jam,
Yeah.
which I know doesn't get a lot of love, but that game was awesome. So and then like when I got a Dreamcast, I played a ton of sports games on the Dreamcast.
Oh
The
shoot.
Dreamcast,
And
yeah, the
in
Dreamcast was like a
yeah.
major sports thing, right? Like, I mean, it was NFL 2K, NBA 2K, NCAA 2K. They had a baseball game. They had, you know, Tony Hawk played better on there. The NHL
Mm-hmm.
played better on there. Blitz played better. Like, there was so many sports games for that console. Tony Hawk, even like if you want to throw Tony Hawk in there, and Dave Mears Pro BMX was like, those games were awesome.
Yes.
Oh, because
The,
it's
the,
because of the way like the stick layout was, right? And like
yeah.
the Genesis or the Dreamcast controller was perfect for three things, right? Arcade ports, sports games, and fighting games. That
Well,
pad was awesome.
it had the Naomi board in the system, so it
Mm-hmm.
could just like make it easier to port arcade games to the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing with NBA on the Dreamcast is holding an L and R button to match up the arrows. I used to hate that so much just
Yeah.
to make the free throw and everything. But man, I do, man. I besides like Pat Robertson, basketball on Genesis, and I love Triple Play on Genesis. I used to play that
Mm-hmm.
like during the summer and everything. But man,
Yeah.
NBA 2K, that was my first time playing a whole basketball game through a season, and I picked the Blazers at
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
And it was just like I think Retro Concepts was the developers,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. Yeah, that man, that the Dreamcast became the sports system
Yeah.
for me, and it was because it was weird because even though as a Nintendo fan and everything, and seeing NCAA double basketball and Ken Griffey Jr.'s baseball, Nintendo kind of got away from sports games and started putting that stuff into the Mario universe, which was cool and everything. But man, the sports games, like my sports era was the Dreamcast because that's my brother. He was the Sega fan of the family. So when he got a sports game, I would try it out when he was at school or work or anything. And normally I tried NFL 2K. It wasn't my thing. And I think that's because of Joe Montana and stuff. And I didn't really know football as that well. But something about NBA 2K on Dreamcast just like what's the game? Having my VMU in that mug, and just saving all my games and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, Genesis, the other basketball game I played on Genesis was Pat Riley's basketball, and it was like all these fake teams. There were no real teams. It was just like the blue team and the red team and the yellow team and whatever else. And it was like I played that a lot. But yeah, I mean the Dreamcast was like the first like that was like the main thing I played on Dreamcast was sports games. And obviously when PS2 came out, like Madden took it to another level and NBA Live took it to another level. And then, that was peak sports was PS2 Xbox era and GameCube,
Well,
I guess.
Well, I definitely for wrestling fans, like the N64 was the system. It's kind of weird because if you think of it in reality, when it came to sports for the NES, Konami was running it. When it came to like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, it was EA. When it came to Dreamcast, kind of in that era, it was Sega because they was doing their own, and then it kind of went back. It kind of became EA and Sega Even Sony had theirs, but Sony was just like kind of low key in their thing. Because the only one that really came out of it as a success was the MLB the Show, for Sony. That's not a knock against or knock against them or anything, but like with sports, they were really good at baseball than anybody else. But then just like I said, in '64 had the wrestling games. Uh, yeah, then it's just it, I think not once Sega started putting like the $20 version of NFL 2K and all of that stuff that happened with the NFL at EA, that kind of destroyed football games for a lot of people because that exclusivity went straight to EA, and they're the only ones that could make the game. And now it's kind of like, uh, in a sense.
Yeah.
So,
man, sports games, man, what happened?
well, yeah, because
Where's Punch Out?
Yeah, because I'm like, because Nintendo, and we're going to get into our topic. Speaking of like new IPs, for the Nintendo Switch, I kind of wonder why didn't we get a Punch Out game? We got Punch Out for Nintendo.
We got
of
Arms.
course.
That's what we got. Which like reminds me, like Arms was like the perfect kind of like. No, I'm not saying Arms was perfect. It was far from perfect. But I mean, like, based on like what the game was about, like, where was Little Mac and like the Punch Out characters? Like, you could have easily included some of them in there, right? Like as Easter eggs or, whatever. Like, I mean, Punch Out on the Wii was awesome. The Wii Punch Out was so good. Like, I would take an HD port of that.
Yes.
So I don't know, man. These dormant IPs from Nintendo, they put out a new game every month. Like, where are these dormant IPs, man? Even if it was just like a $20 download of like like a download of Punch Out, like a $20 to $30, download game, right? Download only, and updated like hand drawn art for all the characters, and I think that'd be really cool.
Well, I think with a lot of new directors leading games at Nintendo nowadays, it's interesting to see will anyone take the reign to take Punch Out and do something and like bring it back and do something new with it.
Yeah.
And stuff. Treat it with some new graphics or anything. Because I think people would buy it and play it. Like, it got high ratings for the Wii. So I think it's time, definitely with the Joy-Cons and stuff, definitely with Ring Fit, like you said, in Arms. I think people are ready to move in games like that and actually probably get like strengthened, punching in the air and stuff, and practicing.
Yeah. I don't understand. Even in like the fitness boxing games too, right? Like, why isn't Little Mac like an avatar in that or something?
Yeah, and then we got with WarioWare Move It, where you literally have to play the game using your whole body. From what I've seen, those ideas could be incorporated into a new Punch Out.
So, one other sports game I want to shout out, if we are going to move topics, is Fight Night, the Fight Night series. It was, I think it started on, I don't know when it started. It must have been, well, it used to be Knockout Kings, I guess, for PS1 and PS2,
okay,
right? And then it transitioned into Fight Night. Round 3 specifically on Xbox 360 was like mind-blowingly like how realistic that looked at the time, and it still looks amazing. I mean, Fight Night Champion, I think, is backwards compatible on Xbox through EA Play, and those games still look phenomenal, man. Like, I that might be one of the first games I ever 100% or 1K'd on Xbox. The game was incredibly good looking.
I know Ready to Rumble is a memorable one for a lot of people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Ready to Rumble on Dreamcast 2, man, and Round 2.
Yeah, I played Rocky on the Master System.
I had Rocky on Master System.
I could get to the last boxer, but could never beat him.
Oh, I was terrible at it.
Yeah, I got to the first, the second one, because I think Apollo was like the second one to fight, but it was a Russian one for the third player and everything.
Yeah,
and I was just like
Ivan Drago.
Yeah,
Kills Apollo Creed in Rocky 4. Spoilers for a 50-year-old movie.
Oh no! I could never beat him or get any hits off of him. I'm just like, oh, what the heck, and everything. So,
yeah.
So, but just to do the sports thoughts for you guys, Arch Rivals was kind of a funny one. Def Jam Vendetta was one, and I think at a point in time, people were wondering were fighting games considered as sports games at a time. But I think once Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, Killer Instinct, I think once those games came out and they were more fantasy like, they developed their own genre, which is the fighting games, because just like Karate Kid and Karate Champ on NES, those would probably be considered as sports games in a sense. And what is the Ring Kings? Good Googly Moogly. That was that was a game.
What was the boxing game where like Don King was on the cover of it? Do you remember that?
Don King? It has to be an EA one.
Hold on.
And also, what was the
Don King presents Prize Fighter?
Yeah.
Oh God, hold on. I gotta see it. Okay, so it was developed by Venom Games and published by 2K Games and 2K Sports. So this was 2K's boxing attempt.
What year?
Let's see. It came out in 2009 on Xbox 360.
Oh wow!
And it said initial release date was June 10th. A Wii and DS version called Don King Boxing was released in 2009.
UFC Champs had their fighting game or sports game, I should say.
Yeah.
Being Tiger Woods.
Oh, Tiger Woods, man, that was awesome on GameCube. By the way, played a lot of Tiger Woods, and I played a lot of FIFA on the GameCube.
Yeah, FIFA.
Man, FIFA Soccer is still actually really fun to play. But I don't want to buy it every year because I don't know anything about any of these soccer clubs, right? So,
right, I think it's still number 2, and it just got number 2 in the UK with Spider-Man 2 taking over and Mario Wonder being 3. They just which I understood when I read that story. I was just like, UK is more of a PlayStation, kind of community, kind of fan base or player base, I should say.
Yeah, Xbox really doesn't have any kind of hold over there. Although it sold really well when Starfield came out.
That's good.
But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Nintendo in the UK, I don't know, PlayStation just has a huge hold over there for some reason. I mean, obviously it does here too, but I mean, that's like PlayStation's biggest market is the UK in terms of percentage of sales.
Well, it kind of the PlayStation kind of replaced the Mega System, the Mega Drive, which is the Sega Master System, or the name of their consoles, like Sega Genesis and stuff like that. So, it kind of replaced those games and everything. I think Xbox and Nintendo were just still. I mean, I think Switch now has got it to a better place in the UK. Um,
Mhm.
Xbox a little bit, but yeah, it's still this. I think it. I wonder if it was because of PlayStation 2. I don't know so much if it was Well, it may have been PlayStation 1. Um, would be my guess.
Yeah.
So
Well, sports games, everybody, they're fun. Play them,
yes.
maybe.
So, Corey, you know, Super Mario Wonder came out, and I was kind of thinking about Switch games from Nintendo, but I was thinking about out of the 6 years that the system has been out, there's been a lot of like new IPs for the system. And I kind of want to get your opinion about how do you feel about those new IPs that came to Switch?
Yeah, I mean, so every so here a fact for everybody, which it might not be that front facing, but Nintendo has published a new IP every year except for 2020 since 1983. Uh, so that means we've what is it 2023? So
Mm-hmm.
2017, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23. So six new IP have been published by Nintendo on the Switch. So that would include stuff like 1-2 Switch, Arms, Snipper Clips. Uh, I think we've gotten way more than six, but stuff like Astral Chain. Astral Chain's owned by
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo. Even something like Good Job, that kind of puzzle game. There's a few others too that have been published by Nintendo. So I think I think there's a good mix of games here. Not all of them are great, not all of them are good, but I think when Nintendo sees an opportunity, especially for something like Snipper Clips, right? We argue that should have been a pack-in game,
Yes.
because it's the perfect game to show off how the Joy-Cons use. It's a multiplayer game. Uh, it's just a really fun experience, and I still recommend that game to people who are buying Switches and they ask what games are good and what multiplayer games are good. Obviously the first one you go to is Mario Kart, and then
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking at multiplayer games, Mario Kart, Smash, even any of the Mario sports games or Mario Party. But I always recommend Snipper Clips because it's a 4-player game. It's fun. It causes a lot of chaos. It's funny. Uh, and the way you can screw people over is really funny. It might cause fights, but it's also really funny. So, I mean, that's my answer. But I mean, I think Astral Chain is probably the one that sticks out the most in terms of quality, in my opinion.
Yes.
Arms is obviously one that people point to as like the new IP from Nintendo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they developed it internally. It's new, whatever. It's got a lot of interesting characters that are, uh, fun to, and people obviously got real thirsty over the one chick and like with the white hair and the leather black pants or whatever. I don't know any other names. Sorry, everybody. Min Min, I know Min Min because she's in Smash, but that's about it.
Yes.
Spring Man and Ribbon Girl also, who are kind of like the front facing characters. But then you have stuff like 1-2 Switch, which is like extremely ridiculous and everybody makes fun of, except for my nephews for some reason. But it's still sold enough to get a sequel. We just got a sequel this year. Everybody 1-2 Switch. Why? Why?
that
Uh,
I don't know who brought it. Like no one talked about it after it came out. Just like, oh, that game came out.
well,
Oh,
I think
okay.
the first one sold like 2 million units or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was probably dirt cheap to make because it's all FMV, right? I gotta look this up. 1-2 Switch total sales. Okay, it sold almost 4 million copies.
Okay,
So
that's not bad.
here's the thing though. I mean, that's if you're trying to get families involved and play together, like that's a perfect
Mm-hmm.
game for families and people that don't play a lot of games, right? It's funny, it's kind of stupid. Uh it still makes me laugh when my nephews play it. So I guess there's something there. But like for people like us, it's not really a game that we gravitate towards.
Yeah.
I do think though that the best new IP they published so far is Astral Chain. I think that game is, you know, it's one of the games that I almost wish that the game was on a different console, because I think that game at 60 frames a second and like that game would look beautiful in 4K, you know, a little bit of ray trace, even with its art style, right? Like,
Yeah.
Or like if it would get a sequel on the next Nintendo console, like that would probably be like the definitive sort of version, you know?
I have a feeling it will.
Yeah, I mean, Platinum published or you know developed the first one. I wonder if they would go back to Platinum to do that. I don't see why they wouldn't, unless you
Yeah.
know, unless Camille was involved with it somehow. But I don't think he was involved with that.
No, he wasn't.
So, you know, I don't really see why they wouldn't just go to that. So
Yeah, I think they will go platinum for not only just another Bayonetta, but an Astral Chain too. Because I think with them going to Koei Tecmo, or even like Team Ninja, I think they're gonna go to Koei Tecmo for other games, especially probably they may. I have a feeling they're gonna go back to them with Fire Emblem, and stuff.
yeah, I really like. I mean, Three Houses is way better than a Nintendo internally developed one, right? Like
With Intelligent System.
Intelligent Systems has made some great Fire Emblem games. Don't get me wrong. I loved Awakening and Fates.
Mm-hmm.
But man, Engage just wasn't, pardon the pun, just did I was not engaged with Engage, right? Like that game was, it was kind of like there's no real like powerful story, especially like to draw people in, you got to have something that's a powerful story to draw you in, and it just did not draw me in. And like without the like interstitial kind of like almost Persona like social stuff, you know, I just wasn't engaged with it at all.
And it kind of feels sorry everybody for the side tangent, and it kind of feels that
If they don't
some
know
of the
by
people
now,
that some of the people at Intelligent System work with Koei Tecmo to make the houses. It kind of like just feels fitting because I feel like now Intelligent Systems can make other stuff. Definitely, the Paper Mario series, like Origami King, it's just so funny. It's so good. Like probably one of the best Paper Mario's, or even over 1,000 Year Door. But I think Intelligent System can now probably make another game and everything. Like I would love to see Codename Steam to come back under Intelligent System. I think they did. I think they did Codename Steam.
yeah, they did do Codename Steam.
Okay.
They also do they've also done the Paper Mario games.
Okay, yeah.
Which is Intelligent Systems like kind of bread and butter now, right? I mean, that's what they've been doing. And you know,
they do Advance Wars also in the past?
They did the Game Boy Advance versions, yeah, but we all know Way Forward. Our friends over at Way Forward,
yes,
did that. So you know, it's did the new ones or the remakes or whatever you want to say.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of think they should just stick with Paper Mario at this point and let Tecmo Koei do the Fire Emblem, because everybody I know loves Three Houses.
Oh yeah,
everybody I know loves Three Houses. I think about that game almost as much as I think about Breath of the Wild. It's definitely like a top 5 Switch game for me when this is all said and done.
Mm-hmm.
Like Three Houses is right up there with Breath of the Wild for me.
Like I think this is when it started being Nintendo games started being like super sold out, and you had to wait for like another shipment to come in and everything. Mm-hmm. Or you were lucky to find it, because like that game came out and pretty much that year people felt like that should have won Game of the Year and everything. Mm-hmm. It did it, but it still got the recognition, and people still go to Three Houses. Like even like a couple of years after it's been released, people were going for it, and they were just like, I just have a feeling to play a strategy game. I'm about to pop in three houses, and they get wrapped back in and playing different families and everything, and it's just like, wow, that how powerful that game is. And no shades of Three Hopes, because shoot, Shez is literally, I think, out of the Warrior games, I think she is probably going to be my number one iconic character out of the Warrior games. Because she's just like the voice, the way that she acted, her design and everything. I'm like, yeah, this is top tier. She's an icon.
Yeah. I wish they would put her in her own solo game at this point, to be honest. I think I don't know. I kind of want that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But I do like a lot of Nintendo Switch's new IPs. And everything. Good job of just completely funny.
Yeah, dude, that game's so funny, especially like when you let something go and like everybody gets really mad when you destroy everything.
Yes. Of course, I'm a big fan of ARMS. And everything. So Octopath Traveler, was that published by Nintendo and developed by Square, the first one?
Yeah, the Nintendo published and distributed it here, but then obviously when it came to other consoles like Xbox and the first one's still not on PlayStation actually, so I don't know how that's gonna work. But I've heard that the first one is gonna come to PlayStation early next year. So we'll see, but yeah,
because I think. Oh, go ahead, Corey.
I was just gonna say, like, Octopath was like, man, that reveal of that game was amazing. I think the reveal was more more enticing than the actual game was, to be honest. I didn't really care for the game all that much, but it's definitely like, if you like JRPGs, this is a great one, right? Like, I want it. JRPGs are like a genre that I used to love that I wish I still loved, and I just don't have the patience for them anymore, right? Because they're all like 3,000 hours long, and but yeah, I mean, Octopath Traveler is an amazing looking game. I love that art style. I think the characters were interesting from what I played, right? So.
And then Octopath Traveler 2, goodness, that's going to show up on a lot of people Game of the Year, because a lot of people now just get into it and they're hearing the music and getting the stories and the voice acting. Like, I gotta say, Xbox players next year, they're going to be in for a good ride.
Yeah, man, I keep forgetting, like, Final Fantasy 14 is coming to Xbox next year.
Yeah,
I will try it. I will definitely try it.
it just doesn't. It doesn't feel like my cup of tea.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like mine either. But I feel like I need to do my due diligence for that game, because it's been a game that I've been really interested in. Like, just from like I'm keeping up with this game from like a bird's eye view sort of thing, right? I mean,
yeah.
Gosh, remember when 14 launched? It was a disaster. And then they, like, the cool thing about that game too is like they actually, like, in this new version of, well, new, I guess in quotes, version of 14, they actually used that like reset in the lore. Like the old game is like still part of the lore.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, man. And like the fact that you can play the whole game single player with AI party members is super cool. Like, you can kind of create your own party members too, which is interesting. And like, you can play the whole story by yourself up to a certain point, and for free too, which is cool. So that's how you get people in, man.
There's a video, they capture video showing the first version of it being destroyed, like that whole world being destroyed, and then they were just like Final Fantasy 14, A Realm Reborn, and everything. And I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, that's super cool,
Yeah.
and everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, it really is amazing just from Nintendo's perspective with new IPs that when their next console come out, everybody's gonna be like, what is gonna be the next thing on that system,
Yeah.
and everything. And I think once we find out the specs and games and how the system looks and what it could do, how it incorporates different ways of playing and stuff, I think we'll get a good idea of some new IP and stuff. Because like, if we were going to do a sequel to Snipper Clips, their next console would be a good one.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing about
For
Snipper
it.
Clips though, like you could use the same mechanics. You don't have to have anything different. You just create a bunch of new puzzles for $20, right? And that would be,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, Snipper Clips so good. Everybody
Yeah.
should play Snipper Clips, especially if you have a friend. I don't have friends, but I still enjoyed it.
Hey, you got me.
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh man. Yeah,
So
their new IP. I think overall Nintendo's done a pretty decent job with their new IP this gen. At least it's all quality. Quality
yes.
Nintendo style quality, and not just a bunch of junk like some companies put out. I mean, it's very rare these days that new IP is junk because like you really want it to stand out. But like
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think with new IP, it has to hit like a 9, like a 9, 8 or a 9 to be. I would just say 9 in general to be noticed by people, right? And like look at Immortals of Avium, like that game looks awesome. It has like a 70 something on Metacritic, maybe a high 60s. I don't really remember, but like I thought that game looked awesome, and like it didn't sell anything, and like they had to eliminate half their studio just to survive, which is terrible. And your new IP has to be stellar to stand out these days, which is why like I know people want new IP, but nobody buys new IP, so that people keep reverting back to like known quantities, and it's kind of, I don't know, maybe that's a different conversation we should have at some point, but like the video game industry is like I don't want to say on the verge of collapse because that's really,
Mm-hmm.
drastic, but like every studio is like, if this game doesn't sell, we are screwed type thing, right? Like it sucks that studios have to develop like that with that in mind, where like, it's a game to game thing, and if your game does bad, you're gonna close, and that really sucks. Um,
Well, I I don't know if I think I asked this on for Boss Rush podcast. Um, about like a lot when the restructuring was happening besides Nintendo. It kind of got me thinking. I'm like, is this going to be a DS situation? Um, where some companies will have to probably make a small game for DS, and it puts them back in the black. Like Majesco, how they did with Cookie Mama and stuff.
yeah, well, I
Um,
mean, with like, let's you know especially back then, you could make a small game for DS or 3DS or something on a smaller budget, right? Whereas like
mhm.
the console games have, especially you look at PlayStation's budget for games or Xboxes, like they're in like the hundreds of millions. Like we saw that stuff during the FTC case where like Horizon cost $228 million to make, and God of War was like just north of 200 million. And like you have to sell, now granted these games did, because PlayStation's games are, for the most part, quality in terms of like production, and if nothing else, right? Like
Yeah.
those games sold, but like imagine if God of War only sold like 4 million units total. Like Santa Monica would be screwed, you know? Like there would be layoffs. I mean, we've seen Sony just closed studios just because, right? Like what studio did they just close? The Concrete Genie team, Pixel Opus, just closed them. You know, like they were close to their next project, and like they were, being done, and they're nah, you're closed, which is sad. And like Studio Japan gone,
Yep.
like Liverpool gone.
Yeah, definitely when
Is it
Sony
Liverpool or is
was.
it London? I think it's Liverpool. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it just sucks that these studios have to do that. And like with Nintendo, we've always talked about Nintendo being profitable with their games because their budgets are clearly not as high. No offense to Nintendo, they're just not. Like they don't have voice acting. A lot of their animations are reused from previous games. Like in Zelda's case, right? Like almost the whole world was reused. I mean, obviously they took 6 years to come up with new puzzles and new layouts and stuff, but they didn't like Mario, right? No real voice acting. It's and not that their games are low quality or by any stretch, because they are, and I think that's what I think some companies need to learn from Nintendo is like their budgets are way smaller and their games are high quality, and they and that's why their profitability is so high, because they don't have $250 million budgets on every game they put out. They know how to manage their IP, and like, Yoshi's Crafted World did not need, a $200 million budget. That probably costs like 30 or 40 million, maybe, like a hard maybe to make, and it sold really well. I would say their highest budget game was probably Zelda.
Yeah,
Tears
and
of the
they
Kingdom,
made that.
Yeah,
and they made that money back within 3 days, like 17 million. I'm like, that's.
I mean, yeah, it and that was, and there was a really great article that came out the other day where like Nintendo, I think it was Furukawa, came out and said, there's, we don't crunch, we don't mind delaying our games because quality is our top priority. And granted, Nintendo's in a different place, right? Because they're a first party, their console sells amazingly well. Obviously, their game, 15 of their top 25 have sold over 15 million, 20 million copies.
Yeah.
And so they're in a real, and they're in a great spot, but like a lot of these other studios, man, are not so lucky. And obviously Microsoft is in a different place, right? Because of Game Pass, and it's Microsoft. They can dump millions of dollars into a project. Like, I don't know if Halo Infinite ever made its money back from its budget, right? Because delays, switching teams, having, a lot of contract work, and obviously other studios helping them get that game out the door. I mean, that game probably had closer to like, maybe like $400 million, $500 million budget, just based on Microsoft being able to dump that much money into it. And
especially with a new engine.
Yeah.
Like that.
And even then, like Halo's campaign was awesome and the launch was awesome, but like their roadmap was a debacle. And so it left a stain on that game. And like, it's hard out there for developers. I feel bad for any team in charge of developing a new IP because, it's ridiculously hard.
Well, it's mostly that because like Tango Works, they did Hi-Fi Rush, they did Ghostwire Tokyo, and depending on how people
well.
True, but
also like
definitely
Arcane,
and it's just like looking at Xbox's like new IPs, at least out of them, like Hi-Fi Rush is a big hit. There's no knocking that and everything. And because
the
there's no sales
wasn't as high, right?
Right.
I mean, Hi-Fi Rush did not have a Starfield size budget, right? I mean, they made that game for what, 20 million, I think, or 30 million or something. It came to Game Pass. It sold, I think it sold, around 2 million copies between Steam and people buying it on Xbox.
Right. And and that's one thing that Microsoft has.
Hmm.
Is that their stuff is on Steam also, so
Yeah,
they could recoup sales, do Steam.
yeah,
Um,
and we talk about it all the time on the show, right? Where like, the goal in the '90s, was to sell 1 million units, and you would be considered a
mm-hmm.
huge success.
Yep.
I think you need to hit 1 million units just to survive today. A lot of these games, you look at Nintendo, you know, Xbox kind of an exception, I guess, because of Game Pass. But although their games sell incredibly well on Steam, and then you look at PlayStation, like 10 million is a success, right? It's specific games like 5 to 6 to 7 million is a success. 10 million is a success. 1 million, you're like, on that game should have sold probably like 7 or 8 million. That's a survivability thing now.
Right. Uh, there was just reported, Lords of the Fallen and Liza P, and Sea of Stars. They all hit cross over 1 million, and those are not Lords of the Fallen. That's not so much a
They
new
just
IP.
announced Lords of the Fallen just announced they sold 1 million units today.
Yeah, yeah. Um, those games, like, even though they come from like an indie slash third party kind of um developer, when you hear those numbers, you see developers posting that. Spider-Man did 2.5 and everything, with most of the sales coming from the UK. And that's a big number for them. We don't know anything about Mario just yet. Nintendo hasn't reported anything, or Famitsu hasn't reported anything. Um, but like, when a new IP could hit over 1 million, and that be considered as a good success to them, that means that they did something right,
Hmm.
and to them, they're just probably they're probably all on a hope and prayer that they were able to even hit 1 million, so that studio could keep going and everything. And then it's just like, we hit 1 million, whether you want to consider it as luck or not, but we still gotta go. We still gotta market this game. We still gotta get it talked about and get it into people's hands and stuff. And like, when Nintendo's new IP, Nintendo Directs are a big thing for their marketing, and even at times, like, even if it's been a while, they'll show trailers in a montage 3 months after the game came out to remind you, yeah, we got this game and
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and true, even though Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is, a big seller still in Animal Crossing, they still use those games in their marketing and
Yeah.
stuff.
Hmm.
And so if you could get a new IP into your marketing thing, definitely new IPs in the Nintendo Direct,
Hmm.
for the past 6 years and stuff, that really guaranteed that you may have some really good sales. How the quality comes out, who knows? But it was like, we made it to a Nintendo Direct. There's a big chance that we'll have some really good sales and stuff on it.
Yeah. And I think Nintendo's done a great job of like balancing, new IP with new games in a series with porting games and remakes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's been their kind of like really it's been a great cadence for them, and
Yeah.
seeing a lot of these games come over from Wii U has been nice, although there's a few more they should do. Um, but and then obviously like starting to bring over some 3DS and Wii, and even a remake of a beloved Super Nintendo classic that's coming out in a couple weeks from from the day we're recording. Might already be
Mm-hmm.
out by the time this posts. I'm not 100% sure how the calendar is going, but and then um, and then we've talked about the GameCube. That's the perfect era to HD remaster. Between
Yeah.
Pikmin and Metroid Prime, and not necessarily Luigi's Mansion 2 next year, a 3DS game, and Paper Mario is coming next year. Like, that's the perfect console to just HD remaster for Nintendo, right?
And a good $40-$50 price point for them is magical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you sell all these HD remasters at $40, and maybe your higher profile ones, like, you know, if they ever did like Zelda, right? I mean, obviously those games have already been done for Wii U, but like, you know, you bring those over for $50 a piece, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think Nintendo's got it in the bag there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So.
Well, everybody, that's going to be it for this episode of Nintendo Expansion Pass. Thank you, Corey, for having this discussion. It's just been on my mind, just thinking about new IPs for Nintendo. And
let me ask you this before we get out of here.
Go ahead.
What kind do you think Nintendo should like launch with a new IP with the next console? Like,
yes,
even if it's not like a $60 or $70 game, right? Like something, even something as small as like Snipper Clips or Box Boy or something. Like, I don't know. I feel like they need something that, especially if it's like a Switch 2 and like the Joy-Cons are still around and that type of thing. Like, they need a pack-in multiplayer experience like Nintendo Land or Wii Sports or something like that, right?
I think like for a pack-in, I think they could do like Wii Sports and stuff. But like for a new game for launch, yes, they should have one because like when Super Nintendo came out, the new IP was Pilot Wings, and stuff. And so I think being a new system and giving something new for a console with their release is kind of expected, but B, really give a chance for that IP to maybe create a new genre, maybe start another series and stuff that people could actually get into, and help sell the system. I think with a new IP at launch, people are willing to give it a fair shake and everything. I mean, when PS4 came out, even though Killzone was the big thing, the new IP really was Returnal. Not Returnal. What is that game? That came on PS4. It was a Resogun. That was the system seller for PlayStation 4, and that was a new IP.
Yeah.
So,
man, Resogun was really good.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a PlayStation 4 or 5, you should play Resogun from Housemarque.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
It's like a side-scrolling, like, not really side-scrolling, but like the game is kind of set on the cylinder, and you have to like, it's kind of like a shoot 'em up, but on the cylinder, and you have to save people. It's really fun. Just play it. Play it.
Yeah. So, but everybody, that's going to be it for Nintendo Expansion Pass. Have a great week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye. If you want to be a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushMedia, and find out which tier is right for you. Our Patreon producers at the $5 tier or higher for this month are Adriel Munger, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, and Rebecca Jewell. Thank you for your continued support.